African people is remembering that we're African people. So I think that is something that has hit kind of like a roadblock among African Americans. I think a lot of African Americans have a very difficult time saying, I'm an African. And I think that that's one of the first roadblocks. So first of all, we have to get over our own hangups about saying that we're African. And then once we recenter and redefine ourselves as African, then it becomes very easy for us to see the connections, right? It makes it much easier for us to see the connections between ourselves and African Caribbeans, African South Americans, Africans on the continent, people who are first and second generations in Europe. I think the other, another obstacle or another challenge that we need to face down is we need to stop looking for and looking at these same obvious surface cultural manifestations that we look for when we're talking about what it means to be African. So I remember in one of my classes a couple of years ago, we were having a conversation about African continuities in diaspora and culture. And I had a Trinidadian student who said he didn't see anything African about Trinidadian culture. And so then my question to him was, well, what are you looking for? Are you looking for people who are walking around in grass skirts with feather headdresses? Like, what are you looking for? And so when we talk about what is African, what we need to be thinking about is, why do we all like family reunions? We need to be thinking about, why do we all eat rice and beans? We need to be thinking about, what is it in the cadence of our voices that gives us a reassurance between each other? What is that? Where does that come from? We need to be thinking about, why do we all like to get down when we dance? Why do we do that? Where does that come from? Those are all things that are grounded in African worldview. One of the reasons why we get down is because we value the earth. So when we get down and when we get low, what we're saying is we value the relationship between ourselves and the planet. And that's something that has continued throughout the diaspora all over the world. So African dance, yes, cute. But what is the value that is enshrouded in the African dance? What are we actually saying? A lot of us continue these things, we do these things, but we don't know where they spring from and what that comes from and what that means in our philosophical grounding. You know, why do we eat rice and beans? One of the reasons why we eat rice and beans is because rice has always been a major crop in West Africa. You know, what is it about the cadence? There is a way of speaking. A lot of the times when people don't acknowledge the fact that AAVE is tonal. It's tonal because a lot of the languages that we had before we came here were tonal, and tone defines meaning. So once we move away from trying to make sure that everybody knows that we're African American and we all jump in the African pot, then it makes it a lot easier for us to see the connections between one another. And I think what we also have to understand is that by saying that we're African does not take away from our experience here in the United States. It doesn't mean that our ancestors here did not struggle and bleed and die for us. And it doesn't mean that our particular circumstances here are being ignored. African is the umbrella. African is the encircling. And then we have all of our individual group experiences that have added seasoning to that pot. So when we say that we're African or we say that we're Black, we're not disputing or disregarding the contribution of particular ancestors. But what we're saying is that our experience is coming through that filter of what it means to be African, and that our individual circumstances throughout the diaspora have created all of these beautiful, wonderful textures and flavors to the African person.
All right, you all, let me just say this. This